Hello and welcome to Filmi Ladies. In today's episode, we're going to talk about not one, but two detective movies, both of which happen to be on Netflix, and they star our very beloved Anjali and Poo from the Raichand family. Except this time, Anjali is has an Haryanvi accent and she's wearing a police uniform, and Poo is no longer in her sequin jumpsuits, which makes me very, very sad. Instead, she's wearing like pants and blazers, and she's being very stoic and resolved. So these are definitely shades of Anjali and Poo we have not seen in this parallel universe. Anyway, so we're going to talk about Do Patti and Buckingham Murders. Beth, what did you think of Anjali and Poo in this avatar?
Okay, so I thought Karina in Buckingham Murders was very good in a very non-filmy, a very British, slightly bleak British detective movie.
Hmm.
I believe the conversation we had in our previous episode, or a previous episode quite recently, talked about how we like British mysteries, but they have to be not so bleak. This was quite bleak. Did you get a chance to watch it?
Yes.
Yeah. So honestly, this felt almost indistinguishable from a British mystery detective show the types I like to watch, such as Vera. I happened to watch an episode of Vera the day before seeing this. I'm like, oh, it like all kind of blended together. It's not the same part of Britain, I know, but other than that, kind of gray, kind of watery.
Yeah.
Everybody's a little depressed and slightly evil, and our protagonist is really going through it and has a
Yes.
something from their past to exorcise, has a kindly elder figure so I thought she was very good. Dopati, I have more complicated feelings about.
Mm.
There were moments where I thought Kajal was doing a nice job, and there were moments where I thought she was super irritating. And
Mm.
I do think it was her, not the character. However, she is not helped by that character because that character is badly written.
Right.
So I would give her sort of a like passable,
Mm.
whereas I would give
Okay.
Karina a better grade. However, I don't really want to spend more time in the Buckingham murders because it was so bleak and depressing. Like, it's not like I'm hankering for another just because it was so painful. But then Dopati was also really painful in some other ways. But if they did another one with her as the cop, like, I'd probably watch it. Like, neither of
Hmm.
them are my favorite woman filmy detective, but
Yeah.
mm,
I would say I thought Buckingham Murders was a better movie with a few caveats, which I'll get
mm.
to. By the way, this episode will contain spoilers because before recording, Beth and I were like, are we going to do spoilers? But there's really no way to discuss these movies without actually getting into spoilers. So you have been warned, people.
Should before we do that, do you think our listeners should watch either or both of these movies if they have not already?
If they intend to, if they intend to watch
Mm,
these movies, then watch those movies and then come back to this episode. But if you're not particularly keen on watching these films, and honestly I don't think you're missing out on a
yeah,
lot if
I
you
would
miss
agree.
them.
Yeah,
Like, these are not like my can't miss movies of the year or
no,
anything. So if
no,
you if you're not particularly interested, then just skip the movies, watch the episode.
yeah.
um but yeah, I liked Buckingham Murders more in a way because it made more sense and I liked Beba's
Yeah,
acting. But at the same time, it was so kind of like depressing. And
very
I've
depressing.
seen these, it reminded me a little bit of Mayor of Easttown, which has
Oh,
Kate Winslet in it.
hmm.
And I loved Kate Winslet in that show. But it was a little too bleak for me. And especially in these times, and with
Yeah,
it being November and it getting dark at 4 o'clock, it's like, I don't really want to watch that.
yeah.
The England I like to watch on film is the England of Great British Baking Show, where it's very whimsy and twee and colorful and cute and cottages. I don't really like this very gray post-industrial, crumbling, decaying England. It's not exactly a very cozy and
You
happy
don't like
time.
Race Riot England? Come
I
on.
don't like that England. I was just kind of like, ugh. Where is Great British Baking Show? I want to talk about sticky toffee pudding. So for that reason alone, just because it was so bleak, I didn't enjoy it
Yeah,
because that's not really my vibe. It also didn't have anything picturesque going on that could keep me
not
like
much. No.
held, unlike
Yeah.
say Broadchurch, which is so beautifully shot, like the visuals alone, and David
Hmm.
Tennant. Who can resist David Tennant?
Nobody.
So it was the better movie, and yet I didn't particularly enjoy it. Whereas Dopati was, there are so many plot holes in Dopati, I can't even. the entire movie does not hold up because the writing is so poor, and we'll get into that. But
Mm,
ironically, I kind of enjoy Do Patti more because, first of all, the visuals were arresting from the get-go. It is so beautifully shot, and it's set in Dehradun. I mean, it's set in Uttarakhand, and they've shot it in Dehradun. The house, the colors, everything is just gorgeous,
beautiful.
so beautiful. And Kriti Sanon really surprised me in this movie. I know I've said in the past that I'm very meh on Kriti Sanon, like she's okay. But I thought she was really good in this movie. I
Mm.
thought she did the twin roles extremely well. And just overall, it kind of like worked for me, although the plot holes and the writing is like terrible. And as far as Kajol is concerned, I don't understand what a Haryanvi accent is, but even I could tell that her accent just kept wavering constantly. I was like, girl, pick a lane. Either
Oh,
really commit to doing a Haryanvi accent or just speak in like regular people Hindi. Like just do one, don't do both. So I felt like her character was kind of thankless and weird. If I want to see a lady cop in a very picturesque North Indian hill station, I would rather watch Ravina Tandon in Aranyak. I thought that character was a lot better with like her marriage and her struggles with her daughter and everything. And yet, despite all of its flaws, I found Dopati more interesting because it passed my cell phone test, and I kept wanting to see what would come around the corner, like what was going to happen. And even though it definitely had a lot of very difficult scenes, there was one scene in particular that was extremely hard to watch.
I am sure I
Um,
know which one you mean, and it was
you do.
horrific.
I'm sure you do because it was horrific, but it's also very well shot,
Yeah.
very well done, but horrible at the same time. Dopati just kept me more interested in the film than Buckingham Murders did. So it's kind of a toss up for me, and I would not
Mm,
recommend either film. Like, it's fine. Watch it, don't watch it. I don't have a strong feeling one way or
yeah.
the other.
Yeah. On what planet can an investigating officer also be a prosecuting attorney? And according to Anupama Chopra in the Hollywood Reporter, on not the Indian planet, that's
No,
illegal.
it is, yeah.
So that was, I didn't think they were actually going to go there in Dopati. So Kajol, the investigator, Kajol, the prosecuting attorney, you know, some people can carry off courtroom theatrics and some people cannot. I am going to put her in the cannot
Yeah.
category. And I did fast forward some of that because I was like, oh, this hurts.
Yeah.
But if your
Not
name
just that,
is
Beth, but towards the end, she also played a defense attorney. Remember when
right,
she like reopens the
right.
case? So I was like, oh, good Lord. So you're a detective and you're a prosecutor and you're a
And
defense.
I
Like, what is happening here?
and again, why is this a disbelief thing that threw me when I will readily get on board with all sorts of other things that aren't logical or not reflective of the real world? But this one, when she goes on about her parents' legacy and my dad was this and my mom was that, and my name is,
Vidya Jyoti.
which means
Vidya is knowledge and Jyoti is the light. So light of
like,
knowledge.
okay, we get it. And like even
Do we?
I knew those translations, but I wanted you to say them to make sure we were 100% sure. I was like, that's a lot to walk around with, even as a fictional person. And then I just like that she
Normative
was
determinism at
normative determinism.
play.
Yeah. She's been saddled with way too much. Both the actor and the fictional character. And it's just like why would you have her be the attorney? And why can't she just be in the courtroom ready to give testimony as an officer, which
Yeah.
officers do all the time?
Mhm.
So that really bothered me in a film. And I think it's because, for those who don't know, this film is about domestic violence and generational trauma around domestic violence, among some other things. But those are, I would say, kind of its two primary pushes. And for a film that's trying to do something about a very real, very horrific, very underreported, very misunderstood issue, to then throw in this like legal world bakwas, right?
Yeah.
Like, why is this here? Why is this here? And if it's to
Yeah.
give Kajol a chance to grandstand, I think you could just have her be on the witness stand and she doesn't have to be an attorney or make her an attorney who investigates as opposed to a police officer. So
Right.
it,
Or she could have been like some sort of consultant because we know she has a law
Yeah,
degree. So she could, for instance, prop up the actual attorney who could be like whatever, and she could
right.
be the one feeding them
She
information
could be a
like, hey,
private eye, or she could be
exactly.
like if you watch The Good Wife, she could be Kalinda Sharma, the legal investigator or whatever that's called. So yeah, it just didn't that did not that really was frustrating to me that that was so fantastical for no good reason. Whereas there are some
Yeah.
other things. So like equally in this movie, equally fantastical to me. Now I am not a physicist. I am not a paraglider. But I'm pretty sure you could not hear those people yelling as they're plummeting from the sky, especially when you were not directly under them, which most of those people were not
Mm-mm.
because they fell over a bridge. So that was also incredibly dumb. And I feel like you could have found a way around that somehow. I don't know
Yeah.
what, but like have them snag off a tree that's near a cliff that people are on, or I don't know, anything. Like it just have something else.
Or they're getting ready to paraglide and she notices that something's wrong with the harness and she's like, hang on, this harness has
Or
been tampered
she's
with
got
or
her
something.
phone on
Right.
and she has called someone and they can hear it, which I don't know if that would actually work either with the sound of the air rushing by you
Mm.
and whatnot, but it would be more believable than this. So there were
Yeah.
these very real worldy things that were critical to the attempted murder, the court case around a murder, all these other things. And you're like, but they also didn't have emotional reality to me. And I very
Mm.
often am willing to sacrifice a lot for emotional reality or emotional sort of truthiness or whatever.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel that it had earned that around those things either.
Hmm.
So I just, and I know this is Kriti Sanon's like producing, start and everything. And I was like, I wonder what about this is what you want to do. I mean, you got yourself a nice juicy double roll.
Yeah.
That's that, and I go, girl, you make opportunities for yourself. That's fine. But then the rest of this, I'm kind of like,
Yeah.
why?
I mean, I feel like at its core, it's such a good story. The idea that there's these two sisters and they have all this trauma, and we later discover that their mom didn't just die. Because I was wondering, I was like, okay, their
Yeah,
mom seems really nice, Prachisha, and then I was like, what happened to her though? I know she's dead, but why? And then when you discover it's actually because of domestic violence and stuff, I
yeah,
mean, that was really good. And the way
yeah,
the two girls react to it in different ways, like one has all these neurotic tendencies and she has a fear of heights and anxiety and
yeah.
depression and all of the things, and the other one is just like very hypersexual and has all these antisocial characteristics and everything. I found that interesting. And also the hatred between the sisters, the one sister being sent away to boarding school,
I
uh
know.
all of that was very interesting to me. And
Hmm.
also the sort of the learning and the growing part where later on Shelly comes back and at first they still have that like cattiness happening where they're like, he's mine, no, he's mine. But then when she kind of rallies around her sister, when she realizes the domestic violence situation and then
Yeah.
not wanting to repeat, all of that I thought is so good. It's so substantial. The idea of these two sisters wanting to protect like them and not want what happened to their mother to happen to them, and the
Hmm.
justice aspect of it, that was great. But then they had all of this weird stuff happening. I didn't quite understand Tanvi Azmi's role as the auntie, and
Yeah.
she's like recording something and that she thinks that's evidence. And then Kajal's character, I understand that she's supposed to be a little bit prickly and a little bit frustrated, and she has too much on her shoulders, and she's frustrated with the fact that people will not actually file an
Yeah.
FIR for domestic violence because without that she cannot do anything. I
Right.
I get that,
Yeah.
but she was shockingly blasé to me. Like those scenes where
Hmm.
you see Kriti Sanon essentially limping across the street
Yeah.
and she's bruised black and blue. I felt like Kajal's reactions were so muted in comparison. Like I understand you don't want to be like shrieky or whatever, but why aren't you emoting? There was no sense of horror. There was no sense of, oh my god, I need to do what I can. There was no sense of urgency, like let me save this woman before she dies, even if I have to
Yeah.
shake her and say file a case against your husband. So it almost felt to me, and I could be misreading this, but it almost felt to me like the detective Vidya Jyoti cares more about solving crimes and putting cases to rest, but she sees those as almost like numbers or as an
Yeah.
abstract idea instead of this is a human being that I have the power to help, and I'm going to get her to that point where I can help her. That felt missing to me.
I can imagine. So I don't think the film actually did what I'm about to say, but I can
Okay.
imagine it as a potential. I think you could write a detective. I'm not sure exactly how old she's supposed to be, but if she is Kajal's actual age, she's 50. So
Yeah.
let's say she's in her 40s to be
Yeah.
shave off as movies do. Um, I can see you're kind of maybe mid-career, and
Mm.
when you've been in the law and the police, you are so tired, you are worn
Jaded.
down, you are jaded, and the only way for you to continue to work at all is to take the human
Mm.
aspect out. However, I don't think they did that.
Right.
I don't think that's what they were aiming for, and I certainly don't think they accomplished it. So I don't really want to extend them that. Um,
Yeah.
and I think
But
that would
that
be
could have been a good
interesting.
way to write
Yeah.
it.
And it's kind of like I kept thinking about Teacher from John John,
Mm.
another Hill Station mystery story. And he obviously does have some human element, but he was also very, he loves his formulas and whatever else. So I kind of thought about him as and obviously we're not going to compare those two characters in terms of their
Right.
motivations and things like that, but I was kind of thinking about him a little bit as a more numbersy kind of person rather than a
Yeah.
human-y kind of person. But yeah, she doesn't and it's not like we understand her to be like, you have to solve X many crimes before December 31st or else or whatever. Now I did fast forward a few bits of this film, so I fully understand there may be things I'm missing, but I mostly fast forwarded through the courtroom stuff once I
Mm.
realized how annoying it was going to be.
Yeah. No, and also the way they've shown it, she almost seems to have a lot of support at her police station. She has a boss who seems to be fairly supportive. She doesn't
Hmm.
really have the obstacles in her path towards doing
No.
her duty that so many stereotypical detectives, like so many filmy detectives have that, right? Like they
Yeah.
have to do stuff despite their superiors breathing down their neck. She doesn't really
Yeah.
have that. I mean, she does have her boss kind of mention like you need to tread lightly because this dude is, his dad is rich and they've come here from
Yeah.
Haryana and they have lots of money, but beyond that there's no one really like curtailing her. So despite that, I just found that a little bit weird. But I feel like
Yeah.
at its core, the domestic violence aspect of it, the generational trauma aspect of it, the sisters sort of being torn apart by trauma and then coming together again, I thought that was really good. And I
Mm.
almost wish that someone would take this story, the script, rework it, and like make a different movie out of it. Because what they presented was not
Yeah.
particularly
No.
working for me.
No, it was
So
not.
yeah.
No, but I did love
Mm.
the outdoors. The
Yes.
mountains are beautiful, the buildings are beautiful, the interiors are beautiful, like that dark wood and like when they're in one of where Somya lives, I guess there was a
Yeah.
hallway with like all the dark wood frames and dark furniture
Mm-hmm.
against like a creamy wall. I was like, this is so beautiful.
Yeah.
That
Well, even the exterior shot of their house was kind of like
yeah.
a pistachio aquamarine.
Yeah.
It was so pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the visuals of this movie really went, and also the hand gliding shots and the
Hmm.
clouds and everything was really, really pretty. So I did enjoy that. And it did remind me again a little bit of Aranyak.
Yeah.
Aranyak was, have you seen Aranyak?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was good until the very end where they
When it is
completely
stupid.
botched it so
Yeah.
bad. Like that
Yeah.
movie, people should watch it and like just stop it 20 minutes before and just come up with their own result because that movie ending was bad. But Aranak was also very beautiful in a
Mm,
similar way, like but different. Like there were the woods and the mist, and something about mist and fog and mountains really lends itself to mysteries, as
yeah.
Mr. Ruskin Bond knew, for instance.
Yeah.
Um, so I like that. It made it much more visually appealing than Buckingham Murders, for instance. What did you think of Buckingham Murders?
Yeah, it felt very much like a bleak British detective
Yeah.
show to me, which is not that's relatively a compliment or basically a compliment coming from me because I love British detective shows. I don't gravitate towards the bleak ones as we've discussed, but
Mm,
this slotted in very nicely. Like genuinely, I kept forgetting I was watching a Hindi movie that was mostly
yeah.
well, an an Indian movie that was mostly in English and not watching Vera, for example.
Right.
Like it just kind of slid right in there. So that kind of
Who's in
like
Vera? I've never watched it. Who's
Vera
the
is
actress in that?
Brenda oh my God. Sorry. Why am I blanking on her name?
I don't know her.
Um,
I've seen Prime Suspect, which I love Helen
yeah, that's
Mirren.
very big. Yeah, Brenda Blethyn. I was talking
Okay.
about Brian Blessed earlier, so a moment I was like, am I giving her the wrong surname? Brenda Blethyn. Um,
Okay.
it's about a woman detective in Newcastle, so it's very northern British. There's lots
Mm,
of those kinds of accents. We're dealing with kind of a different environment than London and the South and things like that. Um, and it's she has some past somewhere on the spectrum from sadness to trauma, I would say, but she's
okay.
very competent. She's a little bit on the frumpy side, like she's always wearing kind of like a rumpled coat. She looks a little bit like Columbo in a way. It's not funny like Columbo, but I think people kind of don't quite take her seriously because she's a
Underestimate her.
woman and like kind of very beige. She
Yeah.
has a younger sergeant with her. Usually there's two different guys at least who have played him. So yeah, it's mostly just it's a murder of the week kind of show, but
Okay.
it's its tone is there are funny moments in it, and she in particular has some kind of quippy one-liners with her staff or whatever, but it's not so bleak where you're like, well, I'm gonna go drown myself in the vodka now or anything like
Right.
that. And it's not like Broadchurch, but it does have some, it touches on some really terrible issues and things like
Yeah.
that. But among the British detective shows I've seen, it's not the most bleak, certainly,
Mm,
but it's got there's something about the and if you know Northern Britain better than I do, which would not be hard, I have been
I
spent
do
some time
not.
there, but I'm no expert. But I feel like the light is kind of paler and grayer and
Oh
bluer, whereas
God.
things in Southern England are like they try to get more of the like yellow
Mm,
sunshine kind of vibe. We all know England is not super sunny, but
yeah.
like so I think it's supposed to feel a little more cold, maybe a little more
Mm,
sparse, maybe a little more and they deal with people who have plenty of money all the time. So it's not like everybody in this is not like a police headquarters that's in an underprivileged neighborhood or anything
right.
like that. But it's northern for all the things
Yeah.
that that kind of implies about Britain. Probably less so now than it would have in the 80s, for example. But yeah, so Vera is very good, but it is not always an easy watch, I would say. And
Yeah.
I kind of fell off of it for a while because mostly because I stopped subscribing to the thing it airs on here. But recently I was like, oh, you know what? I bet some of those are on YouTube. And they are. So you can watch Vera
Right.
on YouTube if you want to.
Because I
Um,
watched Prime Suspect because I love Helen Mirren so much. I
right.
mean, she's just
But
amazing.
that
And
one
I've
is
watched
bleak.
Cracker, and they are bleak. Happy
Yeah.
Valley is bleak.
Oh yeah. No.
Broadchurch is bleak, but
Yeah.
Broadchurch is also awesome
Yeah.
because Olivia Colman, David
Yeah.
Tennant. I love the tension.
Yeah.
I went through a phase where my husband and I kept saying to each other, Miller, Miller. We just kept yelling Miller, Miller to each other all day long. That
Yeah.
was really good too. Um, but yeah, I thought Babel in this movie was so awesome.
I've never seen her so um
Beaten down.
yeah, she just looks beaten down all the time. And the film opens with the murder of her
Yeah.
child by a drug addict, I think. They're implying like it's sort of a random
It's
killing.
sort of like a stray bullet
Yeah,
situation,
it's
kind
not
of.
like
Yeah.
they are targeting her or anything
Right.
like that. And she is, grief stricken. She has this very kindly father who tried, and I
Yeah.
think he's a doctor, right? I
I
think they
didn't
said he
catch
was a.
that.
It's not
Did they?
important. It's not
Okay.
important. But she's having a really hard time, and so she transfers to a different city to get away from the site of that, which totally makes sense. And then she's
Mm-hmm.
um, put on this case that involves a murdered boy. And she's like, I don't want to work this case, but the
Yeah.
head of her office makes her. And then there are all sorts of complications. And yeah, I don't think she smiles once in the whole film. I, I mean, that phrase like de-glam avatar comes up with Bollywood heroines a lot. And I feel like
Mm-hmm.
that is too simplistic a phrase to apply to this. Like, this is
Yeah.
really a very transformed Bebo that we see and
Yeah.
her Johnny John character is somewhat like that at times, but that person is running and
Mm-hmm.
hiding. And this person is just beaten down, like you said, by coincidences in her life, not by any person or
Yeah.
anything. She's just it's grief. Um,
I feel like Kareena Kapoor is such an underrated actress and she
yeah.
does grief so well.
Mm.
Like we've seen a little bit of that in some of her movies. We've seen a little bit of that in Omkara.
Hmm.
We've seen it in some of her films, and she does it in a very controlled way. She's very nuanced, and your heart really breaks for her. There's
Yeah.
times in this movie that I really was reminded of Talash.
Yeah.
Like, Rani Mukherjee's grief over her child, and then also Amir
Hmm.
Khan's grief over his child. And then Karina was in Talash as well in that tiny little role that she had.
Yeah.
It was very, very believable. And those little clips that they had, like the flashback clips of her laughing with her son in the
Yeah.
park where she's in the pink pullover
Yeah.
and her face is just so radiant with laughter.
Yeah.
And Bebo is so good in shots with children. You can
Mm.
really see the joy on her face. And then to see her in those scenes, and the last scene where she just breaks down crying after she
Yeah.
burns the little jacket or whatever it was
Yeah.
so hard to watch. I
Yeah.
thought her performance was just phenomenal in this
Yeah,
movie.
but the combination of like it's not that she's low energy exactly, but she's just so subdued the whole time. And yet
Yeah.
her brain is clearly going. She's solving, and she brings to light things that other people had missed or tried to
Mhm.
hide, as a
Mhm.
good detective would, right? And she is do I want to say relentless? I'm not sure I would say relentless, but like
Dogged for
she
sure.
is on this case and she is going
Yeah.
to solve it. I also like that in the end, I don't think the film is saying she solved this crime and therefore she is over the grief of her son.
Right.
But there's obviously some parallel tracks happening here with like working towards something. Um,
Yeah.
and of
Or
course we
maybe
don't,
just surmounting something she didn't think
yeah,
she could.
there you go. Surmounting that. I
Um,
like that better. Yeah.
Also, maybe she felt a little bit. I really like that scene where she meets Saqib and she gets her boss to,
Yeah.
a meeting with him, and she keeps saying to him, "Just tell me the truth." And he's like, "Nobody cares about us. I'm a drug addict, like whatever." And then
Yeah.
she's like, "No, I'm thinking of a mother. I'm thinking of a father. I'm thinking of a boy." Is it like she was just so human in that scene, and she was such a mom person, and she was such a good person in that scene. I really loved her, where she was almost putting her detective hat aside and she was like, "Just talk to me. I'm here to help. I'm not a
Yeah.
snitch. I'm not going to turn you in. I just want to know the truth and I will help you if I can." I thought that scene was really well done, and I don't know what the name of that actor is. I meant to look it up, but the young boy who played Saqib, he was so good in that scene.
Yeah,
Like,
he
he
was.
really held his own.
I'm trying to pull it up if my browser will actually load
Mm.
here. Um, let's see. Saqib was played by, sorry, this is not a Kapil Redekar. Redekar.
Okay.
Um, I was going to try to look up the writers of this to see what else they've done because I thought they did a really lovely job. I liked also that there was this so two things. One is the human when you were talking about the sort of humanity, there's a very, very small side plot about the grief over losing someone to COVID. And
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen that in any movie or show anywhere.
Yeah.
And I loved that. And they assigned that to a kind of unexpected character, I thought, and
Hmm.
they sort of traced that out in a way that I was not expecting. And um, being surprised by a film is not something I require by any means. Like I'm one of those people who will read the end of a book first. I don't mind knowing what happens in a mystery before I watch it, whatever. But this was a really interesting surprise to me. It was just a little thing, but obviously it was huge to that person, and it did explain some of why they are the way they are and why certain things in their
Hmm.
house were happening the way they were. And it was I was very surprised by that and really quite pleased. Um, and then the other thing I wanted to say was that this movie too deals with domestic violence in a different way. And we see so maybe not the similar we see some, do you think it's fair to say rage on the part of the person suffering domestic violence from their partner?
For sure, rage. And
And
I
it
think
goes in a very unexpected direction, I would
it was
say.
it
And
seemed
also,
very like scorched earth.
yeah,
Like, my life has not turned out the way I wanted it to, and I hate that, and I hate everybody. And you know what? I'm going to show all of you.
yeah,
It almost seemed like this blinding rage that took over. Um, I was kind of shocked. by
I was
that
too.
because again, I'm one of those people that cannot tell who the murderer is. Unfortunately, which works out okay, I feel like, because
Yeah.
I get surprised. But when we discovered that it was Preeti, okay, first of all, that is my name. Pitu is my nickname. Preeti is my name. Why are all the Preetis in these movies terrible? There's the Preeti from Kabir Singh. Now there's this Preeti. Like, could we have a nice character called Preeti? Thank you. Anyway, so this horrible murder woman called Preeti, it was just such an interesting scene, like when she talks about how her husband married her and brought her over, and she's basically like nothing more than a maidservant to him, and her job is
Yeah.
basically to look after her mother-in-law and her husband, and now this child that he's adopted, she didn't even want a kid. And then, she just talks about, and I was like, okay, I get it, but you could have maybe like dumped his ass and like flown back to, I'm like, I mean, you have a passport, don't you? But I guess she wanted the insurance money, and she wanted her husband framed for the death. And it was so cold, Beth. I was shocked. I was like, I understand
Right.
that you're a victim of violence. And I understand that this man is a bully and he's horrible. And my guess is your mother in law was horrible as well. And I
Probably.
understand you're trapped in this life. I get it.
Hmm.
And I sympathize with you. Having said that, you don't groom a young boy, have a sexual relationship with him, and then get him to kill a child. Like, what is wrong
And
with you?
and then get your husband to kill him.
It was awful. I was just like shook by that. Like, there were
I
many, many things she could have done, but not that.
I enjoyed the like escalating pam pam of the end.
Yeah.
The like WTF kind of moments there. Now, again, people maybe who are more insightful or something than we are might have seen that coming. I have gotten to the point of watching mysteries that I usually can remind myself, don't rule anybody out. But
Mm.
I still was not prepared for that, and I was very impressed. And I liked again, I felt the film kind of put this out there that we could think about it if we wanted to, but it didn't hammer it. Like, here are mothers responding to lives that did not go the way they expected or wanted,
Mm-hmm.
responding in very different ways, which was fascinating. And they don't
Mm-hmm.
really make any kind of comparison. And I don't feel like the film is particularly judging the murderer or
Mm-hmm.
murder instigator woman, because she doesn't actually do the murdering herself, right? She's the mastermind. Um,
Mm-hmm.
they judge her as they would judge any criminal, but I don't feel there's the extra layer of like, but you're a mother,
Right.
it doesn't do that. And I'm so
Yeah.
grateful for that, because the over insistence that all women should love motherhood and sacrifice
Mm-hmm.
everything to it is really tiresome. So
Mm-hmm.
really liked that they allowed her to be complicated. And now, is she a little bit cartoonishly by the end? Well, sort of, but within the tone of this film, I wouldn't say it's cartoonish.
Yeah.
She's obviously
The
a
only
ridiculous villain, but she's not vamping it up or anything like that.
Right. The only thing that bothered me was how easily she confessed. Like when they figure out that she's the one, and they go and grab her at the airport just as she's gonna make her
Yeah,
getaway, and then they're questioning her, like, that's fine. But the fact that she just like gives up the goods kinda, and she's like, yeah, well, I did it, and she's like very nonchalant about it and everything. I was just surprised that she didn't put up more of a fight, because
mm,
for all practical purposes, she had almost gotten away with it. And my other
almost.
question is, could they really have prosecuted her though? Because where is the proof, right? Like, she didn't kill the kid.
Right.
Prithvi did. And
Yeah.
then she didn't kill Prithvi, her husband did.
Yeah.
Her hands are completely clean. So
Yeah.
how do you prove intent, right? Like, I
Yeah.
almost feel like I'm not saying she should do this, but I'm just spitballing here. I feel like if she had just kept her mouth shut, or I would have liked a line where she just says to Jasprit Bumrah, she just says, yeah, I did it. Prove it though. How can you prove it?
Mm.
Can you send me to jail? I don't think so. I bought my ticket and I'm flying off to where I'm flying to the Canary Islands, and I'm going to wear a bikini and on the beach and live my best life and screw all of you. I almost wanted a little bit of like a screw you from
Yeah.
her, because that character has so much rage inside her.
Mm.
She almost gave up the goods too easily, I thought. And I also don't know how you're going to prove she is a mastermind. I literally don't think there was any proof.
Mm.
So that was the only thing that like bothered me. But I thought it was interesting. There's a Preeti Zinta movie that very few people have watched, and I like it with some caveats. Apparently, I'm not capable of liking anything without caveats, but it's by Deepa Mehta, and it's a movie set in Britain. I think it's called Heaven on Earth or something.
That
I'll
sounds
have to
right.
look it up.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
No.
So it's a really interesting movie. So Preeti Zinta plays this young Punjabi girl, and she has an arranged marriage, and she moves from India to England, and literally from like her second day in England, she's basically given a bus ticket, and she's told you're gonna go work in this factory, and she works like on
Mm,
an assembly line of some sorts, and it's like this sort of like montage of her taking the bus every day to the factory,
mm,
working, coming back home, making food. Her in-laws are horrible to her. Her husband beats her regularly. There's a
mm,
particularly harrowing scene where Preeti Zinta's in the kitchen, and her husband, for whatever reason, he's a crazy horrible human being, he starts beating her up, and she is like on the floor, and he's kicking her, and her father-in-law just like nonchalantly walks into the kitchen to get like a glass of water or something, doesn't even raise an eyebrow, doesn't even make,
mm,
and just walks out. And it's so horrible. But I've heard of these situations where a lot of Indians who live abroad, not so much in the US, I haven't heard of that, but a lot of Indians who live in the UK seem to do this thing where they have these arranged marriages with girls back home who are from
mm,
like these tiny little villages, don't have a lot of education, don't have a lot of agency, get married to them, promise them a better life abroad, and when they come over, they have no social support system,
mm,
nothing, and they're trapped in these marriages where their only worth is the paycheck they can bring and all the
mm,
household labor that they can provide and the children that they can produce, which ideally
mm.
must be male only.
Sure.
And it's a huge problem. So it definitely reminded me of that movie a little bit because
Yeah.
that character also then has a lot of rage. It's actually one of Preeti Zinta's best movies, I would say. So if you can stomach it,
Mm. I would need a pause after these two
you would. Yeah,
films,
maybe
but
a palate cleanser.
yeah.
But then eventually, I had actually seen an interview of Preeti Zinta ages ago where someone said to her, why do you just keep doing these very like bouncy, bubbly, ding, dimple movies? And she got quite defensive. And she said, have you seen Heaven on Earth or whatever this movie's called?
Yeah,
And they
that's
were
it.
like, no. And she was like, right. So I've been doing films like that too. You just haven't watched them.
Good for her. Good for
Yeah.
her.
But it did reminded me of that a little bit. So that was my only thing. I would have liked Preeti to be a little bit more sort of not stick up for herself, but just be more in character and show a little bit more of her rage instead of being as monotone as she was.
Mm,
To just breathe. That's all.
mm.
Um, are there any other movies where the lady detective is appealing to you? How do you feel about Mardani?
I love Mardani. I love that film. That
Mhm.
said, I have not seen the second one yet.
I've
And
not seen the second
I
one.
don't know why. I love Mardani so much. I wrote about it in a book chapter. Like I really do love that film. I think it is so I think the way they have a woman hero in it is so interesting. There's so much going on with kind of what it says about modern urban horrors and all these kind of,
Mm,
I just think it's great. And I think Ronnie nails it. I really do think she's very good
yeah.
in that movie. Like it's a little bit different from some of her other roles, obviously, and she is not, she's kind of gruff and prickly and all those things, but also, is still a little bit of still has some humor about her and things like that, which I like. It's a little
Yeah.
more complicated a character in some ways,
Hmm.
but also not a character who is stricken by grief, right? So,
Yeah.
but like she coheres better as a character to me than does Kajal's character in Do Patti,
Yeah.
for example. And it's not. I didn't compare the run times. Maybe Mardani is longer, but it's not. I just think the writing on Do Patti needed another couple revisions, another
Some
couple drafts
reality
or
checks,
something.
maybe.
I'm sorry to say that because of who's involved with it and everything, but I just kind of in terms of other women detectives, I haven't seen that many. I've seen a movie where
Oh,
I think she becomes a police officer after her husband Rajnikant is killed, if I recall. But it's kind of one of those 80s, 90s,
oh,
things. I know there's one where Dimple is a police officer, but I believe that was so violent I couldn't stomach it, if I remember. Um,
okay.
The Mardani really is the one that comes to mind most for
I've
me.
never
I
um I've never seen the one where Tabu is a cop. Which one is that? Is it
Oh,
Drishyam?
Drishyam.
I've never seen it.
Yeah,
Is
me
it good? Do you
neither.
like it?
No, I
Okay.
haven't seen it. I would. I just for some reason
Yeah.
haven't prioritized it. I don't know why.
Yeah. Because if there's one person I would love to see as a cop, it's actually Tabu.
Yeah.
I just think she has such a great
Well,
personality. I feel like she would do such a good
you've
job.
seen her
So,
in Funna, right? Isn't she a cop at the end of Funna?
oh yeah, I did like her. I
Or
mean,
she
the
in the
movie
army or
was
something, but yeah,
terrible,
yeah.
but she was good. But Tabu's always good, so that doesn't mean it a lot.
Right. Right. Well,
Yeah,
and
but
she's an intelligence officer in Kufia,
Kufia,
which I really
which I have
liked.
not seen. Okay.
Yeah.
So what
Um
is it about these 90s actresses that we're now starting to see like when they're doing their like serious roles and their de-glam roles, they're playing
yeah.
these sort of jaded police officers. We've seen Ravina do that. We just saw Kajal do it. We've seen Bebo do it. Why is it suddenly like they're interested in playing like cops
Oh,
and
and
detectives
Priyanka
and
Chopra
things?
obviously in Dawn
Oh yeah.
is one, but
I don't
um
really notice much in Dawn except for Shah Rukh. It's a Shah Rukh all the way
oh,
for me.
and when you started talking about Preeti Zinta, I actually thought you were going to go into her as a cop in Sangharsh.
Oh, I haven't seen Sangharsh. She's a
Oh,
cop
that's
in
the
Sangharsh.
Silence of the Lambs remake.
Oh Lord. Is it terrible? How terrible is it?
I don't remember thinking it was terrible, but it's not, I mean, it's nowhere near as
Who plays
upsetting and
Anthony
violent as
Hopkins?
the um it's oh my God, we've just seen him in things. He was the
Ashutosh Rana?
he's yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I
Because
was like
that's
the
the
guy
first
in
name that
war.
came to mind. I was like, Ashutosh Rana, that's the only
Yeah,
person I
yeah,
can
no,
think
that's
of.
right.
But like,
I'm pretty
oh,
sure.
interesting. I liked Radhika Apte as a cop that I saw her in a movie. I'm trying to remember which one it was, but I'd seen her in some film recently and she was a cop. I thought she was good. Ooh, you know who I loved as a cop? Sonakshi Sinha in The Hard.
Right, I remember
She
you
was
loving her.
excellent. She
Yeah.
was excellent. I was so team Sonakshi. I was like, yes, you go, girl. She was great in every single scene. I was like, I want to be friends with you. She was awesome. Um,
One thing I
I think
really
she would
liked
be my
about
favorite lady cop.
yeah. One thing I really liked about Buckingham Murders is, and I'm going to draw a very facile kind of distinction here. In 2024, I am trying to be very careful about what I let myself think about fictional cops, even. And, the non-uniformed detectives feel
Mm,
like a different species to me than the uniformed people. And
mm.
that's not fair. They're all cops like
Yeah,
ACAB, right? But there's, and especially when you put them in Britain, it just feels different. And I know it's not necessarily that different. And this is something as an onlooker to Britain. And, it seems like a different, better place, even though it's probably not. But yeah, so watching detectives feels a little different than the beat cops and things like that. So like Kajol does a lot of detecting in
hmm,
Do Patti, but she is a uniformed officer, not
right,
but I would really love to see some women get to do now. Sit down. I know you'll be shocked when I say this. 70s style masala cops, right? Like they didn't
right.
really ever get to do that. I'm not aware of any women getting to do that. Although I think Hema Malini plays a cop at some point in the 80s. But, like
Okay.
although there is an all-woman version of Amar Akbar Anthony from a Bengali one, and I'm trying to remember who plays the cop, and maybe it's Archana Puran Singh, if I remember right. She's in that movie, but so there would be that. I don't remember that film very well, and I don't think it had subtitles, so I'm sure I didn't absorb very much. But um, I want some more. I'd like to see that and see how I feel about that because these movies that we're naming and that I found a list of, women cops, they're all pretty dark, aren't
Yeah.
they? And there's something about this sort of like again, this is a silly thing I'm going to say, but like the whimsical nature of chasing Jeevan who's smuggling gold bars that doesn't feel as high stakes as someone
Yeah.
going after domestic violence and things like that.
Yeah.
So like I'd like to see a woman cop get to do something that is a sort of fairy tale crime. You know what
Mm.
I mean?
More masala maybe. But
Yeah, but we
didn't
don't make those
Deepika
anymore.
just do Singham?
She did.
I mean, I'm not gonna watch it because Rohit
No,
Shetty,
no.
but that actually is in line with what you're
That
talking
might be
about.
more, but then
So
again, I bet it's hyper violent, right? Like it's, and probably a
it
different
could
kind,
be.
but maybe, was about to say maybe I'll watch it. No, I won't. I won't watch it. What about Vidya Balan and Niyat? I still haven't seen that, but isn't she a detective?
Oh, I did not like Nia. It
But
was
is
just
she a
very
detective?
poor. She is a detective.
Yeah.
Yeah, she goes to that like mansion or whatever where the Vijay Mallya-esque
Yeah. Is she a
Ram
like a
Kapoor. She was
police
okay.
detective or is she a PI?
She is technically an Indian detective who's
Okay.
been sent
So
to
she's police of some
Scotland.
kind.
She is police,
Okay.
yeah, and she has to like go in. It was actually really terrible. I did not enjoy it at all. I
We
would
have
not
also
recommend it.
forgotten Shonali Bose from Doom 2.
I love Shonali Bose. I
Now
also love her sister.
that's a masala lady cop. That's
Yeah,
like a
that's a
jewel
masala lady.
heist cop. I'm more
Yeah.
into that than the hard-hitting social issues. I'm so sorry.
Also, we know Shonali Bose is great at dancing.
Right.
And it's Bipasha, who is absolutely stunning. Justice for Bipasha. No, I love Shonali Bose. There's also Madhuri Dixit in Khalnayak is a cop,
Yeah.
and she's hysterical in it. And she goes undercover. She's now
Yeah.
that's a very masala cop. She's
Yeah,
going
that is.
undercover.
That is.
She's dancing to Choli ke piche kya hai. She's hysterical and funny in her uniform. She's yelling at
This is
people.
so it's like almost I'm this is an increasing list of all these big names who have done at least one cop, but
One.
maybe not more than one. Does Sri
Right.
Devi ever play a cop? I bet she does somewhere.
It's not coming to mind to me.
Mm,
And I don't think Juhi Chawla has ever been a cop. I wouldn't buy Juhi Chawla as a
I was
cop,
just
first of
thinking about
all.
that. Yeah.
Like with that helium voice, actually, she could be the best undercover cop because no one would buy her as a cop, so no one would blow her cover. So maybe
Oh,
that would work.
Sri Devi is a cop in Jawab Hum Denge. Does that mean
Never
anything
heard of
to
it.
you?
No.
Or that's what the internet is telling me.
Has Aishwarya been a cop? She's been a lawyer in like Jazba and stuff, right? Wasn't she a lawyer
Yeah,
in
he
Jazba?
was. I don't
And in
recall
Sarkar Raj or
any
something?
cops, but
I don't remember her as a
yeah.
cop. I think my favorite masala cop would probably be Madhuri in Khalnayak because I just enjoy Khalnayak as a movie
Sure.
just overall. And
Sure.
that is a very masala, very fun, very sexy, very entertaining cop
Hmm.
in that movie. And other than that, I love Sonakshi Sinha in The Hard. So those would be my favorite cops, I'd say.
Yeah.
Vidya Balan in Niyat was very disappointing.
Mm.
Because I love Vidya Balan. So
Yeah.
like I wanted to love it. And I was like, this is not it. You know who could be a good cop? Amrita Singh. She could
Sure.
be a good cop. Like she could now play like because of her age, I don't think she would play like one of these cops. I think she could play like the really higher up cop, and it could be like a political nexus sort of a story where she could either be good or bad, it doesn't matter, but she has to
Mm.
be someone really high up who is in charge of
Hmm.
things like the
Hmm.
whatever the DCP or something like that. That could be cool. Or maybe she's like a retired cop and she helps people out.
Is she like Dimple in Pathan?
Yes. Oh, Dimple in Pathan
I
was
mean,
so
that's army,
great.
right? So that's not
Yeah, yeah.
police, but
Yeah. But something of that nature, like a
yeah,
senior
intelligence. Yeah.
lady cop. Yeah, that would
Yeah.
be amazing.
Yeah.
Well, if you manage to watch Deepika and Singham, let me know how that goes. I'm probably not going to because
I
Rohit Shetty is an
haven't
avoid yar for
I
me.
haven't seen any Singhams. Do I need to see the first ones to understand?
I haven't seen any Singhams either. I've seen the songs
Oh,
from Singham
sure.
because I like the CT Bajai. I like that song, but I haven't really managed to watch
Oh
those.
boy. Oh boy.
Who knows? You may like it because you like Bulbulaya 3, which I still haven't watched,
I
which I
did
was
like
shocked you
Bulbulaya
liked it.
3. I did like it. I had a very good
Okay.
time.
So because you told me you
Again,
liked
I'm
it.
not gonna tell you like you have to see this or anything, but
Oh,
if you have, I it is enjoyable. I think you might
okay.
find it. Did you like the second one?
No.
All
I
right, then
loved the
so
first
maybe
one.
maybe don't bother then.
Okay.
But
Well, I can't. It
Vidya
left my
and
theater.
right, but Vidya and Madhuri, so
I
you will like that.
know.
I think you could watch it, right? I don't think you're going to regret those hours of your life or anything, but nor do I think you'll
Yeah.
be missing anything really by not seeing it. Although they do both get some fun, like cackling, am I
Oh.
a ghost? Am I not a ghost? When am I, kind of things
I feel like
happening. So
I might enjoy it because
I
Vidya
think you
and
might
Madhuri
enjoy
is
it.
like a good combo for me. I'm not watching it for Kartik Aaryan.
I don't think it's going to pass your phone test, but I think that's
Okay.
okay.
Yeah. I'll still be uploading things on Instagram while I'm watching it, but that's
Yeah.
fine.
I think
Okay.
might be a time pass, but I think you would enjoy it just fine.
So now that you want to take a little bit of a break from the bleakness, which by the way, I watched Do
Mm.
Patti and Buckingham Murders back to back last
That's
night.
rough. That's
I did.
wow.
I watched The Patti, I finished it, and then I was like, okay, let me add Buckingham Murders to my watch list. Then I don't
Mm.
have to look for it the next day. And when I saw that the runtime was 1 hour, 46
It's
minutes, I was
shorter.
like,
Yeah.
I can do
I
this.
can do
And
it.
so then I watched it, and that was a lot for me. But tonight I'm going to catch up on the Great British Baking Show, so that'll be fine. That is the England I enjoy, with the sticky toffee pudding and the
Yeah.
patisserie and the breads, all of that, and Noel Fielding and his amazing sweaters. That's the one that's the one I like. So what is going to be your antidote to these bleak things? What do you have planned to watch over the next few days?
I haven't really decided.
Okay.
So yeah, we shall see. I think as I mentioned recently, I've spent quite a bit of time with Shalimar
Mm.
recently, and I was watching the English version, but some of the English is so hard to understand that I did
Oh.
did
Why
have
is it hard
captions
to
in.
understand? Like dubbing, accents?
Yeah, so I am finding mixed reports out there on whether Dharmendra did his own English or not.
Oh.
So there is a book that was written by Bunny Rubin, the film
Mm.
journalist, right after Shalimar came out about the making of the film. And it talks about Dharmendra working with Pearl Padamsee, the
Oh
theater
yeah.
personality, about his English diction and stuff, and like him practicing really hard.
Mm.
To me, the voice does not sound like Dharmendra, but maybe it's so he's trying so hard with the English that it just kind of muddles what I think what
Mm.
he sounds like to me, right? And I'm not a
Right.
Dharmendra expert. I'm a fan, but by no means have I seen
Right.
even one quarter of his films, probably. So I would really love to know if that is actually him. But then, so his accent is different, Zenith's is different, like everyone's English is a little bit different. So you just gotta
Yeah.
kind of pay attention in a way. And also the audio on this print is pretty cruddy. So
Yeah.
partly it's that. There so that doesn't count quite as an English movie, even though it is an English movie to me. So I think I need to find something with maybe Midwestern Americans in it that I will understand without having to try at
Yeah.
all.
Speaking of accents, I am once again, going to tell you to please watch Deadlock, which is the New
Oh
Zealander
yeah.
detective show. I definitely needed subtitles for that because I do not understand Aussie accents, and I definitely do not understand Kiwi accents. Like, if I thought Aussie accents were impossible to decipher, the Kiwi
Interesting.
accent is even worse. Like, I would not be able to get through that without subtitles. It's like Matthew McConaughey. Like, usually I understand him just fine because I can understand his Texan drawl. Like, that's okay.
Yeah.
But when I watch True Detective, the one that he's
Ah,
in with
yeah.
Woody Harrelson, no problem. Every time Matthew McConaughey came, I was like, what? So I had to, like, I needed subtitles
Uh,
for all of that. And I still
that's
couldn't make
really
head or tails
funny.
of what he said.
That's
But
really
I
funny.
will say, if you want a non bleak, extremely funny, laugh out loud show about female detectives who are
Mm,
very, very smart and witty and hysterical, and it's such a feel good show. I am once again going to recommend Deadlock.
okay.
Watch it. That is very good. It's the
Where
whole first season.
where is it streaming?
I saw it on Amazon Prime,
Oh,
but I
okay.
saw it 2 years ago, so
Oh,
now I
okay.
don't know where it is.
And
And I
I
know
do not have
season
Prime,
two.
so I may need to go
Okay,
looking for it. But
I know season two is coming out. Like, it's in production, so
okay.
I'm very excited to revisit them. The main detective in it is so funny. Like, seriously, if you watch it, you will thank me.
Okay. I would like to watch it. I will see what I can figure out for
Yay!
myself this evening. Oh, since our most recent episode before this was on comfort movies, maybe I will
Oh
dig out one of
yeah,
these aforementioned comfort movies. But
yeah.
yeah, it's been I do tend to watch older Hindi films more than I watch new releases, certainly. So it was fun to watch two new things
Yeah.
back to back. So I might kind of go on to Einthusen and see what else has come out that I would like to see this year because I know there've been a couple things that I've missed.
I really still want to see Vicky Vidya ka wo wala
Yeah,
video. It disappeared without a trace. Like, it came to my
and
local theater, and within 4 days it was gone. And
that
I
did
went to
not
the
make it to
yeah,
Einthusen, right?
I don't know. I haven't checked 9,000.
I
I
think
went to
it
the
did
box
not.
office lady and I was like, hi, I was looking for tickets for, because my friend and I were going to go. And I was like, I'm looking
Yeah.
for tickets to Vicky Vidya. And she was like, is that the Indian movie? And I was like, yes. And she was like, oh, we took it off. And I was like,
Uh,
Oh, why? And she was like, well, enough people weren't buying tickets. So,
did you see Cal Maine, the new one?
no.
Okay.
Who's in it? Who's in the new
Well,
one?
your favorite Akshay Kumar.
No.
But Taapsee Pannu is in it, and I do love Taapsee Pannu.
Really? I'm very neutral on her.
Oh, I love her.
Like, I wouldn't watch a thing for her. I did like her in
I
Thappad.
probably would watch something for
You
her.
would?
I think I
I,
would.
if you
Not
like
all
Taapsee
things,
Pannu,
but some things.
well, she's really great in Haseen Dilruba, and she's also great in Man Marziyan. Have you seen
Yeah,
Man Marziyan?
I have. Yeah, I mean,
She
she's
was
amazing in
so
that.
good. Vicky Kaushal was so good in it too.
You know what I started and never finished, just on the kind of
Mm.
newer films question is I started Love, Sex, or Doka too,
You
because the
said it
first
was
one I
very
think is
bleak.
spectacular. Yeah, I still haven't because it also is, yeah, it's bleak. So I'm not sure I'm
Yeah.
gonna, man, there's just, I'm
Did
looking at
you
all,
hear there's rumors that they're gonna make a Nagin movie? I was very excited. And
tell
then I
me,
heard,
tell
yeah,
me
but it's
everything.
okay, okay, hold your horses. Good
Horses held.
news, Nagin movie. Not so great news for you is gonna have Shraddha Kapoor in it.
That's okay. That's
Okay,
okay.
good.
Like Street, having recently seen Street 2,
Three,
like
yeah.
she's not the worst by any means
Yeah,
to me.
she's
Like
fine.
I'm never gonna seek her out, I don't think, but
Right.
I will 100% watch a Noggin movie regardless. I would
I'm
watch
very excited about it.
anyone in a Noggin movie, honestly.
We need to bring the Nagin movies back. There need to be more of those. I recently made did I tell you I made my friend apologize to you and me?
Yes.
Because I told him I want to watch a Nagin movie tonight, and he said, Nagin movie, chi. And I said, excuse me? Did you just say Nagin movie, chi? And he was like, yes. And I said, you need to apologize immediately to me and to my friend Beth and to all Nagin people for offending us. And he was like, "Mommy, I'm sorry." And I was like, okay, you are forgiven. Not really.
Did you watch Do Pyar with Vidya?
No,
I might
it
watch
did
that.
not look great.
It doesn't, but I like Vidya.
I love Vidya, but a lot of the stuff that she's been doing is very hard for me to get excited about because it's just kind of like if you since you love Vidya, I know you haven't seen Jalsa. I highly recommend Jalsa because
Yeah.
Jalsa has her and Shafali Shah, and they're both
Yeah.
great. It
I'm
is
sure it's
bleak though.
amazing. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it is
can't
bleak.
bleak right now, I don't
No,
think.
you.
I'm flipping through the 2024 movies on iTunes, and there's a lot of
I feel like Vicky Vidya will not be bleak. That's just
no, I
probably
don't
like
think so
fun
either,
and
but
yeah.
where is it? Why can't we watch it? Where is the movie? We want to see the movie. I don't know. Maybe I'll go back to not Hindi for a moment. I don't know. I haven't I mean as regular listeners know, I do really like Bengali movies and I've not watched any of
Yeah.
those in a very long time. I have been experimenting with YouTube's at least as far as I know, fairly
Oh, the
new
AI.
automated translation captions.
Mm,
And there's I believe it was the Comedy of Errors with Uttam Kumar in it. It does have
okay.
the option to do the auto translate from Bengali to English. So I might try that and see how it goes. If I'm confused beyond belief, I'll probably give up, or I'll actually go reread a summary of Comedy of Errors.
Because
But I
last time you
think
said that the AI was pretty good, you said.
I think it just depends on the film because there are
Okay.
some. So I was sampling moments of the Hindi version of Shalimar, which I have seen, but it's been quite a few years, and I wanted to compare because the English one is much shorter. They cut out a lot of the songs. They cut out various things, including one of the big fights with Dharmendra and Shetty at the end. And I love Shetty. I'm like,
Mm.
why are you cutting this out? This does not need Hindi to understand. Like,
Right. It's a fight.
it's a fight. Um, and it was really bad. But the audio, again, on that film is not great on that particular upload. So I'm assuming it depends significantly on the audio.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure Hindi speakers who would try the Hindi to English automated will find it pretty bad. And I know enough where I can tell when it's really terrible, but obviously there are fine differences that I'm going to miss. But the couple that I've tried other than Shalimar have been pretty good. Like
Hmm,
certainly
okay.
better than nothing in my opinion,
Okay.
for what that's worth.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Let me
Okay.
ask one more question before we sign off. Do you think it's important or has any relevance that women are playing cops?
Yes, because it is traditionally a male-dominated profession.
Mhm.
I feel like women cops do not get support from anybody. They don't
Yeah.
get support from the system. They don't
Yeah.
get support from their coworkers who are male. They don't get support from the institution itself. And they're also seen with suspicion by the people as a general rule. And in a lot of these cop movies, it seems like their families don't particularly support them being a
Yeah.
cop either. So it makes it a little bit more of an underdog
Yeah.
situation where
Yeah.
it's like, technically they're in a position of power because they're a cop and the law is on their side and they have
Hmm.
all this like power, but they're
Hmm.
they're really not particularly powerful.
Hmm.
Now you could make a movie where the female cop is just so intensely unlikable and
Hmm.
power hungry and horrible, like
Hmm.
they're just scummy. You could absolutely make that movie, but
Hmm.
I think typically they just show these lady cops as someone who's more righteous and
Hmm.
duty driven,
Hmm.
and I don't know anyone who's a cop, right? But I imagine if you're a woman and you want to be a cop, given how difficult it is to be a cop and to stay in that,
Yeah.
I would imagine that there's at least some element of wanting to make a difference, because
Hmm.
you know it's going to be an uphill struggle. So I
Right.
presume, I feel like I would be more positively inclined towards them, but
Yeah.
I don't know if that's just bias.
Yeah.
I do have one friend who's actually a Twitter friend of mine, who joined the IPS. Like, she did the IPS exams, and she's a detective. And she, I think, currently is based in Hyderabad.
Mm.
And I know from talking to her, like, she's extremely brilliant. And when she was doing the UPSC exams and stuff, a lot of people told her that she should consider doing IFS, Indian Foreign Services, where you
Mm.
get to be a diplomat,
Hmm.
because that is seen as so like prestigious,
Yeah.
and you get to go abroad and everything, all of that stuff. And I know she wanted to do IPS because she wanted to make a difference. So
Mm.
I know at least one person who did IPS and is an officer, is a detective, and cared very much, cares a lot about women's issues, and specifically wanted to make a difference.
Mm.
So someone like that, I think, would exist. But yeah. What about you? What do you think?
Um, it's certainly a way to show another place where sexism, you know, rears its ugly head and
Mm-hmm.
perhaps is, and we've seen this with obviously this is true of various things. Like there's the precursor to Prime Suspect, which I believe is just called Tennyson, where she is starting out
Yeah.
as a, yeah, things like that, and she faces sexism in
She's
the
like a beat cop in that,
now
right?
series. Yes, just
I think
yeah, and I
so.
think there's only three
Yeah.
episodes or something. It's a short
Mm-hmm.
series, but um, so yes, I don't think it's necessarily more important than showing women in other kinds of jobs in other fields where sexism is also heavily at play, but I do think it's important to show women in public facing and public service jobs,
For sure.
um, of all kinds. So not just that one. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously, like the default women job, at least, well, and maybe I'm speaking more of American things, but is teacher.
Yes.
So it's interesting to see a different kind of public service job,
Yeah.
um, that has such authority behind it and how that does or doesn't work. And
I
you
think
know,
the other interesting thing from like a narrative or like from a cinematic perspective is that there's always this constant threat of violence, right?
uh,
Like we saw this in Do Patti, where
yeah,
the criminal Dhruv, he is so belligerent towards her, and he literally like threatens
yeah,
her and pushes her against a wall. Like he would not dare do that to a male cop, like if for
probably
no other
not.
reason but the brute strength alone.
Yeah.
So I think that it's
Does
also
he
way
do
more
it?
dangerous for
Does he
women.
do it to her colleague?
To Brijendra
Yeah,
Kala? No, he doesn't. I don't think
interesting.
so.
Because
He,
that is not a physically imposing man.
that is not. No.
So it's interesting that he doesn't do it. I didn't
Yeah.
think I'd seen that, but as I said, I fast forwarded a bit, so I thought maybe I'd missed it. But yeah. Or like in that scene when they go to the pool hall in they go to another state, right? Or another town,
They go
certainly.
to Haryana,
Yeah,
which is where the villain is from
yeah, and
originally.
the men there threaten her, but they don't say anything to him. And in fact, she storms off to go find the manager, and he stays behind and
Exactly.
kind of looks like he's going to join them in pool. Like he walks up to the pool table, and I thought
Hmm.
that was really interesting. So
So
yeah,
that's kind of interesting too, right? It's kind of like if there's like a regular man and a policeman, the policeman has more status than the
Mm-hmm.
regular man does. But
Mm-hmm.
if it's a regular man and a police woman, she does not have more
No,
status. She has
no.
even less because she's a woman. So I
Yeah.
think that also adds to the, because like the audience is now scared for the police woman, where the audience
Yeah.
would not necessarily be scared for a policeman.
Right.
So I think that also makes
Right.
it more interesting cinematically. Like as a woman, I'm scared for her, right?
Yeah.
Like I want her to be okay.
And maybe that reiteration of the constant fear is helpful. Maybe it's not. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like to have to see and to have to see another woman being afraid all the time, even though we know that's the case for many people, a lot of their lives or even all of it. But it is hard to watch sometimes.
Yeah. There's another a movie that I really like, which has Meeta Patil in it. It's the Marathi movie Umberta, where
Mm,
she also has the public service where she,
yeah,
but it's interesting, where she is the principal of a remand home for
yeah,
women. And that's
yeah.
interesting too, because again, she has a little bit of power and she certainly has
Mm-hmm.
power over the incarcerated women,
Mm-hmm.
but she has no power compared to the men and all the political shenanigans that happen around her. And that's really interesting too, where she's trying to change the system from within. And she's trying to do it in a very kind of like noble
Mm-hmm.
way instead of
Mm-hmm.
stooping to other stuff. I don't think I've ever seen that in any other movie where someone's like the head of, because that's such a weird thing. It's like it's a remand home. So it's for women who kind of are jailed, but they're not 100% prisoners. They're, it's meant to like, they're supposed to like improve. It's almost like juvie in a
Yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's like a weird like purgatorial state where I don't know quite what that is. But yeah. Okay,
Mm.
interesting discussion. Well, you go watch something happy. I will go watch Great British Baking Show, drink some Earl Grey tea, put my pinky out, eat a little bit of a pecan tart. I got some pecan tarts from Napa.
Very nice.
And, unbleak our lives a little bit, cuddle our animals. You have a
That's
kitty
right.
cat. I have two kitty cats and a doggy. And, have a wonderful day. And all of you people, tell us what you think. Tell us if you saw Do Patti. Tell us if you saw Buckingham Murders. Tell us if you've seen Aranyak. How do you feel about lady police officers? Are you going to watch Singham? Should we be watching Singham? Do we like Deepika as a cop? I feel like Deepika would be badass as a cop. Just
Sure.
FYI.
Yeah, that's not the
She'd
issue
be great as a
with
cop.
this
It's
film.
she's
Yeah.
not the problem. It is
No.
Rohit Shetty that we have our doubts about. But I don't know. Maybe it's fun and entertaining. Y'all can tell us if it is.
Mm,
And Beth is already like, no, it's not.
I don't know. Ugh.
Okay, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for watching. Bye.